How are you, as a musician, coping with all of this, the pandemic, the quarantines, etc.?
Um, you know, that's such a good question. I wish I could say, I'm so creative now. I'm just writing one song after the next. I wish that was me, but I have such a hard time staying creative. I got really lucky in a way because my record released during this time. So I got to take all the extra time that I had thanks to Corona, I'm gonna say, to promote it, to get right to a lot of people, get it to people, So I guess in that way of promoting the record, I feel I had more time.
Hmm.
Um, but it hasn't been very easy. All my gigs got completely canceled. Nobody wants to take bookings right now because they don't know when they can open up again anyway.
Yeah.
Um, and so it's kind of, I honestly, the one thing I have yet to do is a live show. I am staying kind of in my own little thing. I have gotten together with a bunch of creatives. We got together to do some writing via Skype session. We had a meetup, an online meetup with songwriters from Ireland, Germany, France, Seattle, Nashville, Los Angeles, Japan, Italy,
Wow.
and France.
All in the same
So
call?
yeah, all on the same call. We were actually, I think, a total of 13 people. Um, and we were all on that call for an hour and a half, kind of just getting creative again, doing some free writing, showing some of the songs, and it kind of got all of us started again, as everyone on the phone call apparently was going through the same thing of, I wish I could say I would write. I've been writing a bunch of songs, but I really haven't.
Right.
So, you know.
Yeah, yeah, no, and that is an interesting thing because I've been seeing because there's been a few albums that have been coming out, and were scheduled to come out, and it's been interesting watching different artists wrestle with the idea of, okay, do I release as planned during this time, or do I hold back? And it seems more than a few are just leaning toward, I'm going to release it. And either the
Yes.
and so I'm curious, what drove that decision for you?
Um, I guess that if you look at the title of the song, the title is Bridge the Great Divide. And so I found that to be even more of a thing now during the time of social distancing and self-isolation, where people are getting more in contact due to the fact that they can't meet in person. You're calling people more than you would have before. You're trying to make the time. You're you're actively searching for connection. I
Hmm.
find that I found that to be the perfect moment to release music. I thought that would be the time where I wanted to bring some light and happiness and joy to people in their living rooms when listening to this song, and the whole meaning of the record of getting people together from all over the societal, political, whatever spectrum, which is the origin of the idea, felt kind of accurate for now as well. So I was like ready to hit that release button.
Yeah, no, it totally works out. I mean, it's also, although a very different song, coincidentally, the Rolling Stones just released a tune called Ghost Town, which they had written last year, but which suddenly fit, and they did a video with all of these deserted city streets, and yours, I would say, is definitely applicable. Both the title of the album of Bridge the Great Divide, but also,
Hmm.
speaking of which, if you go back into the Silver Bullet song, um,
Hmm.
it's it somehow has a whole different meaning now that we're living through this pandemic than
Yes.
maybe what you intended or originally wrote it about. And I'm curious from your perspective as the songwriter or co-writer, what's it like to see a song like that suddenly take on new meaning based on changes in the world.
Well, I certainly didn't think it was going to take off new meaning that quickly. I, I don't know. When my co-writer and I, when Alpha and I wrote this song, we were very inspired by Blowing in the Wind because I grew up singing that song when I was a little girl, and that song was out long before I was even born, and it's means something to me now as it did when I was a little girl, as it did before I was born, and it means something different in every time, right? It's people
Mm,
still sing it in times. So that was our idea. That song could transform throughout time. We were thinking of it meaning something different 10 years down the road rather than something different when we wrote it and then when we release it. I'm
yeah,
glad that it applies. I mean, I'm not glad that Corona is happening. That's not what I'm trying to say.
yeah,
I am grateful to have a song that means something to people now that they can connect with, be it if they live in the States or if they live in Europe, because this now applies to all of us, if that makes sense. Versus
yeah.
before, the song was very much oriented towards the American society.
Mm.
And so because that's where I was living and that's what I was experiencing, and so I in some ways I find it I'm happy that it translates.
Hmm. And staying with that song, I'm curious as far as because you do a lot of co-writing with various artists, and I'm curious with writing with Alpha. Um, what does she bring to the mix as a writer, and what did you bring to the this mix as a writer?
Alpha is a huge influence on my writing, actually on the whole record. She knows this too. When I met her, she kind of inspired me to go back to playing guitar.
Mm.
She's the singer-songwriter that rocks the guitar, has some amazing lyrics, and she just pops out great lyrics one after the other. And I was at the time that I met her, I was kind of hesitant. I was taking a break from writing where I was kind of not sure if I really am that good of a songwriter. Should I continue to write? I just kept writing my journal and so when we got together, she definitely brought perspective into the whole thing. And what I loved about, co-writing is all about being vulnerable,
Mm.
and with some people, it's easier to be vulnerable than with others, as it is in life. And so for her, between the two of us, we ended up sitting down over a bottle of wine and just talking and talking and talking and talking about things that usually are taboo the first few times that you meet people. And we were like, no, we're getting into this. We like, finally, we have someone that wants to talk. And so when we wrote the song, it was just like that. It was just like that conversation where both were giving their input, which then enriched the whole song. She brought in the
Mm.
guitar. I came up with this one. The name of the song, Silver Bullet, came from the fact that my husband, he back then was my boyfriend or fiance, I don't even remember. He kept saying there wasn't not a silver bullet for all these solutions at work and etc.
Yeah.
And me being the semi-foreigner, I couldn't understand. I'm like, what do you mean? What's a silver bullet? Because I didn't get it. And so when he said that, I'm like, there needs to be a song written about that. So I brought that name, I brought that title, she brought the guitar, and the song was then written pretty quickly.
Wow. And then, so just to clarify, because you talked about it being vulnerable when you're writing with someone else, is it um, is it being vulnerable in that sharing of fears, embarrassing moments, and things like that, or are you talking about vulnerability in the sense of you're giving some material and you're giving this person the right to say no, that doesn't work?
I think it's both. I think it's column A and column B.
Mm,
In many ways, sharing, saying something and thinking that line's already too. I think I'm such a terrible self-critic for
Mm.
myself. And I'm like, the moment I'm going to say this, the other person's going to think that, and they're not going to say it. So I have this whole conversation in my head. So just being able to say something and put it out into the room and let that be there and hope that the other person is not going to shoot it down, or learning to be okay when they do, because that's also the process. Not everything that comes out of anyone's mouth is great at all times. And
Yeah.
then at the other point in time, yeah, just being vulnerable with what you are showing, that you're being completely honest and open, and being vulnerable in the fact that you are afraid that they're going to shoot that down, which hasn't happened to me during this entire process. But
Mm.
somehow, for me, and I know for my co-writers, when I talk to them, the fear of the the Rotten Tomatoes getting thrown at you is
Yeah.
still somehow very much there. So yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
vulnerability.
because I was going through some other interviews you had done, and in one of them, you were quite honest about your own feelings of self-doubt, which I don't know, surprised me, if only because, you see this footage of you singing in front of these audiences, and you would think, well, this lady is, she's set, she's level, she's got no worries, or she's confident in all that she does, and also even on this album, it's very your singing is very strong. There's no hesitancy or anything, and so I found it quite fascinating to find that you did have an issue with self doubt, and I'm curious, how do you push through that to get these great results?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for that compliment. That means a lot. Um, Especially knowing that most of the time I'm terrified. And it's kind of good to know when that people are like, "Oh, you're so confident." Um, it's it's a little bit of both. On the one side, I'm an overachiever, and
Mm,
if I wouldn't do it, I would find myself to be lazy and to cop out, and that would be the worst thing for me. And so that's it. That's a no-go. So I have to go anyway. I might as well do it. I might as well just, push through. And then on the other side, I have an amazing group of loving people that support me and make this project possible. From the people that helped, get this record off the ground, from all the musicians and the producer and the co-writers and all the fans and listeners that supported the crowdfunder to get the record recorded in the first place, and my family members that keep pushing me to keep writing a new song. So it's it's the family members, it's the new listeners, the people that have messaged me. They're like, "Is there any new music coming out?" Um, and I enjoy it. I
mm.
enjoy doing it, despite the fact that it terrifies me. So it's if that makes any sense at all, it's completely somewhat schizophrenic because you are going on stage. I'm a nervous wreck before I'm scared of writing with people because I'm complete fear of judgment. But when I'm on stage and when I'm writing with people, the pure energy and joy and excitement I get from doing it is kind of all that sticks with me.
Mm.
And then I go back into let's do this again.
Yeah, okay. And I mean, I've heard some similar things before. Like, I was always fascinated when I found out, like, even to this day, Stevie Nicks still gets just horrible stage fright right before she steps on stage. And I'm like, but you've been touring for decades with Fleetwood Mac. Doesn't matter. Still.
Yeah.
Um, so, and then staying with the idea of the various people you've written with, I'm curious, what do you look for in a co-writer?
Um, the initial connection. It's with everyone I've written. It was on some at some point at one moment we looked at each other and we're like, I get you. It's this person. It's either on a musical level where I had a co-writer that the moment I heard one of her songs, she wrote a song that reminded me so much of Brandy Carlisle, which I am completely in love. Like, her as a songwriter is my idol, and so I'm like, oh my gosh, Brandy, do you listen to Brandy Carlisle? And she's like, yes, and I'm like, okay, we need to write. Or it's, it's writing with a friend who was originally from Ireland, born and raised there. I was born and raised in Switzerland. We both lived in LA, and both of us are now like, well, LA feels like home, but not Switzerland or Ireland. So it's this one thing that connects the two of us, and
Hmm.
or the three or the four of us, and we're like that. Let's write. Um, and it was through that that I realized you can connect with almost anyone if you give them a chance.
Hmm.
If you're patient enough to listen, and you don't have to agree on everything, but it was this thing where even the people that I was intimidated at first or wasn't really sure of what to make of them ended up being amazing co-writers and friends and people that I'm still very much in touch with today.
Oh, wow. No, that's interesting. That I mean that, and that's quite a statement that you can connect with anyone. Um, and it, also goes along with the idea of bridging the great divide, because right now it feels like, be it news or online, a lot of people can't connect with anyone. So,
Yeah.
and then, well, I'm curious, does it just take being a good listener to being able to connect with someone, with anyone?
Um, I think being a good listener, patience, and I think the element of being able to agree to disagree without
Hmm.
being angry about it. I find that these days the nuance gets lost
Yeah.
and the pendulum swings so extreme that neither side is like, both sides are too extreme, and they rattle each other up, and I find that can be in a conversation, that can happen in a conversation too. And I'm the first person that will want to talk to you because I want to show you my perspective. But I also want
Hmm.
someone to be able to show me their perspective without feeling judged or attacked or just put down. I don't think it doesn't mean you have to support it, but I think if we would do more listening, if people would feel more heard, they wouldn't go into extreme defense modes,
Hmm.
and then the pendulum would swing less. So I guess
Yeah.
it's kind of a vicious circle from my perspective.
Hmm. And in some ways, that kind of segues into, I wanted to talk about the song "Finally Be Me," which um, seems very much along the lines of, I want to be heard, I want to be seen for who I am. Um, how much of that song was autobiographical, and how much of it was pieced together from other people or life experiences?
I think that song was 100% autobiographical.
Ah, okay.
100%. Yeah. It was one of those songs that I think wrote itself in 1 hour. We sat
Wow.
at the piano, and I'm like, I think this is what the song needs to say. And it was there.
Hmm. And then have you, how do I put this? Have you been able to stay in that place where you're finally yourself since? I mean,
Yeah.
you haven't lost it?
No, I think there are always moments where life challenges you, and I think your authenticity will be questioned, and you will be put into positions where, you know, do you want to go there? Is that align with what you believe in? Is that like walking a line? What's the deal? I think the biggest element for me is in the big picture, I am, and in the little picture, I am almost all the time. And when I'm not, I try to find my way back there as quickly as possible. I
Hmm.
think life has its ups and downs, so you're going to get lost. The biggest, when I wrote that song, I that was one of the most, not the most, but one of the most um, absolutely heartbreaking times of my life where, those times when you think, I don't know how I'm gonna keep living and I don't know how I got myself into this in the first place. And I don't think it's you wake up one day and here I am, this is me, I'm gonna stay this way. I think it's a
Yeah.
constant process. I think it's finding your way there and then working every day to staying there as much as you can.
Hmm. And to me, the song is fascinating because it seems like this song about dichotomies, and that it's both about extreme vulnerability, but also about extreme strength and personal power and perseverance. So first off, do you think there's kind of two sides to the same coin? Do you think, one kind of feeds the other, or are they in
Yeah.
conflict, or
No, I don't think they're in conflict. I think one would not exist without the other. I
hmm,
think that, I think you have to go through the rough times to make it through the good ones. If life were like this, it would be boring and we would go insane. Um, not that I think it all has to be, minus 100 plus 100, but I wouldn't be who I am today without all the good or the bad that has happened. They both needed to happen. And so I think that is always easy to say when you look back, you know? When something terrible has happened or something heartbreaking, and then 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the line, you're like, well, that was heartbreaking, but it made sense because then this and this and this happened, which now made something good. But while you're in it, it sucks and it's terrible, and you don't know when you're gonna get over it or through it. And so I do think that while you're in it, um, there's nothing good about it. And I try to remind myself that at some point I'm gonna look back and be like, I'm sure this was worth it. But right now, I'm just not a fan.
hmm. And then not just in terms of the lyrics, but in terms of your vocals and how they sound. It again seems to express vulnerability and strength at the same time. And I'm not sure how you were able to do that. And I'm curious, what's the key to being able to do that? Because usually a song is just absolute power, or it's absolute just crumbling. How were you able to kind of walk the line between the two?
Um, we saved that song for almost the end of the recording process. And I told Mark, the producer and sound engineer and absolute master talent. We've just had finished recording one song and we were like, okay, let's take a break. Should we meet again tomorrow? And I said, listen, let's meet again tonight. Let's take like a brain break and a breather. And can we meet again tonight? I want to get this vocal done. And we were in the studio and I turned off all the lights. I wanted it to be completely dark in that room. Um, because that, I don't know, that kind of makes me feel vulnerable because you're alone, you're in the dark, and and I wanted to sing it top to bottom as many times as I could, just to kind of you sing it once and you sing it as powerful as you can. You're like, I'm gonna be me and I'm gonna be strong and I'm empowered. And then you have the times, I had a time where I just started bawling in the middle of it because I'm like, I'm broken and I'm
Hmm.
sad, and I don't know if it was worth it. And so kind of by peeling away all the layers, I guess, it was the fact that I kind of went through that journey where I'm like, I'm both. You can be vulnerable and sad and sometimes somewhat regretful and still feel empowered and strong for what came through it.
Hmm.
And so I guess it was peeling away the layers in the studio. It didn't take long. It wasn't like we were in there for I don't know how much, but it wasn't the first or the second take. Let's let's say that.
But it's fascinating to me that there's all these alternate versions hidden somewhere in on a disk or a hard drive, and it
Hmm.
speaks to the elasticity of a good song in that you can, again, you can take it more vulnerable, you can take it more powerful. Um, but I mean, is that something that you can do on purpose, or is that just uh, the luck of the draw and how it comes out?
Ooh, I have no idea. I mean, if I want to go technical, I could say that that song is like honey in my voice when I sing it. It feels so good. Like it's just in the right register and I could sing it for hours. Um, I think I've studied a lot of vocal technique where I had to learn I studied, did some musical singing, did some opera, did all that, where I studied the whole thing. But I'm pretty sure it's probably a whole lot of luck too, because I'm never gonna claim on that for me. I
Yeah.
think it's a little bit of everything.
And what else stands out in your mind when you think about recording this album?
Ah, that theme, being me, not not giving into what I think what I think the generic audience wants to hear,
Hmm.
but sticking with what I have to say. Um, Not being, not giving into, the song needs to be 3.5 minutes, or we can't do a long intro, or isn't this way too far, left field or whatever. It was letting the song live and letting it be just as much as I wanted to be me, staying true to my art and how I wanted it presented, because I didn't always have that chance and I wish I did. And so that's, I guess, what I'm the most proud of when I got to record this with Mark and the whole band and everyone. It was every song got to get its grow and blossom into its full capacity.
Hmm.
And that I'm really proud of.
And from a business side of things, how much, what, because you crowdfunded this album, and I'm curious, was that completely necessary to be able to realize this vision to, make it a more
Yes.
complex album?
Yes.
Hmm.
100%. It would not have been possible otherwise. It would not have been possible. I would have probably gotten a really cool EP out of it, if maybe 3 songs, if but without the crowdfunder, this record would not be possible. Without all the individual people wanting to support um, the independent artists.
Hmm. And so is this definitely something you're looking to do again and again as far as crowdfunding, or I don't know, is there an appeal to finding um, a label or someone like that? Because I'm very curious with the music industry going completely sideways nowadays and things totally up in the air. I'm always looking to try and figure out, all right, well, how is this all going to shake out, and will it do it in a way that's really genuinely supportive of artists? So what
Hmm.
would be your ideal, to just keep crowdfunding or to find a label or?
I think crowdfunding is very humbling.
Hmm.
So this is the second time I've done it, and it has always been a very humbling experience because you have to be very, very sure of yourself and make sure that you don't feel like you're begging, because sometimes it can feel like there's a book uh, called The Art of Asking by someone who, I forgot her name, but she's a singer-songwriter
Oh,
and she does, I forgot what her name was.
she's married to the writer Neil Gaiman.
Yes,
I can picture her.
Amanda Palmer. Amanda
That's it.
Palmer, I think is her name.
Yes.
She wrote that book, and I read that book when I decided to do a second crowdfunder, because the first one was hard. It was hard to ask people to support because I I'm not good at asking, so it was a practice, and it felt like begging at times. And so so long story short, I think crowdfunding can be very humbling and very empowering at the same time because you have people that want to hear your music. They're essentially giving you the push in the beginning. I think there's something to be said about a record deal, mainly not honestly for the recording, but for the exhaustive promotional element of it, of promoting the record, getting it to the people, getting in the door, getting the foot in the door is always a plus if you have someone that already has the foot in the door, which can
Yeah.
help. So honestly, I don't know. I would do this again a third time for sure. I don't know what
Hmm.
the future brings.
And then
So,
you've talked about that you kind of have two homes nowadays, one in Switzerland, or you consider yourself to have two homes, one in Switzerland, one in Los Angeles, and yet you recorded this album in Nashville. So why go there to the third location rather than record in one of your two homes?
oh gosh, Nashville was always on my list. From from when I knew what Nashville was that needed to happen, be it as a trip or as a recording or like to go record or write, I wanted to go to Nashville as a songwriter. And then I fell in love with the Americana sound of
Hmm.
music, and I ended up meeting Alpha, who introduced me to Mark, whom I very much adore and respect with the music that he produces and the sound and the ear that he has to kind of make that possible. And each, it's not that he creates a sound, it's that he can make any sound you want. If you want a rock record, he'll do a rock record. If you want a country record, he'll do a country record. And so I guess the combination of everything made Nashville a thing on my list. For me, the country elements that this record does have from the storytelling path that I've taken, it was very natural for me to go, this song should get recorded in Nashville.
Hmm.
And I loved it. I'd do it again in a heartbeat.
Okay. Um, I'm also curious, growing up in Switzerland, what because when especially on this album, it definitely has that Americana feel, that Americana sound. But I'm curious, growing up in Switzerland, what do you think there were advantages to growing up there as a musician?
Um, I don't know. I don't know if there were any. I think the advantages were of I many times wish I would have been born in like raised in the States where you could go to a musical high school and all those
Mm-hmm.
elements where you could just push that earlier. But at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, I guess maybe that was the plus that I wasn't. I got the chance to discover everything. What I loved about being raised here is the fact that I had a lot of cultural influences. And so that nuance that I was talking about, that understanding and patience kind of I feel comes from being born and raised here. We are a very cliche-wise neutral country, as everyone keeps saying that we are, and you drive a half an hour or an hour and someone's going to speak a different language.
Mm-hmm.
And so the that cultural element taught me that one thing that we have in common is music. So it doesn't matter if someone speaks English or Italian or French or German. It's we all ended up bobbing our heads to the same Beatles song. So that is very fascinating. And I would say that was if there was one thing, it was the understanding and power of the language of music.
Hmm. And you do sing in different languages. I'm curious, besides the obvious, what is different about you when you're singing in, say, German as opposed to English?
I think that when you sing in a different language and the people that your that are your audience does not understand that language, you have to be really good at performing the song.
Hmm.
The story should get across if I sing it in Swiss German or French. I want to move people, right? If it's a funny song in French, I want to perform it in that way that people are going to laugh despite the fact that they don't really know what I'm singing about. And that is something that I find very fascinating. I guess for me, I got to train that when I sang here in Switzerland because most people kind of speak English, but they don't really understand the songs. You know, they
Hmm.
just think that's got a really cool vibe. So when you're performing a song and it's in English, they're just gonna either like the vibe or not. And so I guess that I learned early on that when I then moved to Switzerland, to the States, people were fascinated that I can sing in another language. And so I kind of just incorporated what I learned there and did a switcheroo on it.
Hmm. Okay. And to be fair, I mean, I grew up in America. There are some American artists I have no idea what the heck they're saying, but I still like the song. So being fluent in the
Yeah,
language
or
doesn't
it's also
always.
no, and it's also I was listening to a song the other day that I had to look up the lyric. I forget which song it was. But there's so many songs where when I listen to them, I think they're singing this, and I sing it for years, and then I look it up, and it's a completely different lyric,
Yeah.
and you're like, oh, I guess that makes sense too.
Right.
I like mine better, but sure, you do you.
Right, right. Yeah, no, I think we've all had those experiences. Um, what I'm also wondering along these lines is, have you ever, hmm, let's say, since you are multilingual, come up with a phrase, a colloquialism in one language that would be perfect for a song, but have been unable to think of what the equivalent would be in, say, English or another language?
All the time.
Oh.
One of the hardest things for me, I find I don't even know if it's just colloquialisms or just the fact that English and German for me are the same language. I end up saying in English, like a German colloquialism in English,
Hmm.
and my husband, who is American, will say, I don't think that's a thing. And I'm like, no, let me tell you, it's a thing. And he's like, I don't think so. Let's Google that. And so I will, I think that sometimes things can get lost in translation. I love the fact that I can then just write it in the language that the colloquialism is in the first place. But I wish, like, there's a, in German, when you want to tell someone to go away in a semi-aggressive yet polite way, you tell them to blow into your shoes, which is hilarious to me. And I think there's a song there, but and I think it would be fun in English, but I just think it would get lost due to the fact that that thing people would be like, but why are they blowing into the shoes in the first place? Like,
Yes.
so, yes, I have people read my songs through like actual mother tongue American or English speakers
Hmm.
that have been born and raised with speaking English to read through it and be like, do you really say that, or is that just me making up something?
Right.
So, yeah.
And then how were you changed as an artist by your time spent in Los Angeles?
I was turned upside down on my head by going to Los Angeles in the best way possible, I would say.
Hmm.
I remember when I was in Switzerland, I sang jazz and jazz standards and classical music. So the whole setup of a band was not semi questionable to me, where I'm like, do you really need a bass player? Like, really, isn't it like a low guitar? How necessary is it? Um, and getting to experience the absolute musicality of that city and the pure talent that it feels like it's on every corner
Hmm.
um, really inspired me on the one side for my own creativity, but also when performing live with musicians in California, in Los Angeles, where I'm like, these people are out of this world talented. And I started realizing I was extremely ignorant before I moved in some musical elements. And so realizing how much one single instrument can add to a song
Hmm.
and completely change the way it feels and completely get a different reaction out of the audience was mind-boggling to me. And so
Hmm.
I think that helped me personally in my creation and my creativity when I did my songs.
Interesting. Okay. Wow.
So yeah.
All right. Well, that covers all of my questions. Is there anything we didn't discuss that you want to talk about?
Ah, no, I think this was very, very in depth. I loved it.
Okay.
I loved
Okay.
it.
Good. Good. Oh wait. One
Oh,
more.
there
Just
is
kind.
one. Oh,
Okay. I just have
go
one
ahead.
more flippant question. So in the video for Finally Be Me, there's, scenes of you, tearing up a picture, of your now ex. I'm just curious, was that your current husband playing the role of that person?
No.
Oh.
So I have this. I did not want to rip up a picture of my husband. I just thought that was going to get me really bad marital karma. So I decided not to do that. But I have this amazing, absolute darling of a best friend. He's actually the reason I met my husband in the first place.
No.
And I called him up and I said, "Would you please play my imaginary ex-boyfriend?" And there were some negotiations to be had, and he agreed, and he got to okay all the pictures in the video,
Okay.
and he so he said
And
yes. So it's not any real boyfriend, just a really really dear good friend of mine.
okay. And you're still friends.
Oh yes, very.
Okay.
I hope it's not going to get me bad friend karma.
Right.
I really really hope that's not going to be the case, but we're still very very very. Yeah, he was the best man at my wedding, so
Oh. Okay.
I think that's still gonna work out.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Okay. And then I'm sorry, what was the one thing you want to do?
Oh,
Uh,
I just wanted to say that 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 Bridge the Great Divide music video actually no the song inspired us to do a little home social distancing COVID-19 music video that
I saw.
um I don't know if you saw that. I thought that was kind of cool. What I loved about it was the fact that you kind of get innovative. See there's that German thing where
Hmm.
you use the wrong word. You get innovative in taking something that we probably wouldn't have thought of that, but we were both stuck at home when we were busy, but we were, thinking about how wonderful it was back when we wrote in our living rooms and we were together and da da da. So I think that I look out into the world and sometimes things seem grim, but at the same time, I am amazed at how innovative people are getting in being creative and getting together and being in within a community, even with all the social distancing that we have to do right now.
Hmm.
And I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think where does Alpha live? Is
She
she in
lives in Los
America?
Angeles,
Okay.
so she filmed it in LA, and I live in Basel, Switzerland now, so I filmed it in my apartment. And my sister, who usually lives in Hamburg, is the one who did me the favor of cutting it together. So it's kind of an
Wow.
international thing.